Hello, Mr. Rats. How's it going?
I'm doing all right.
Did you message Jay to come on? Jay, how did you find out about us? I don't think you follow me on Twitter.
There was a profile called Joe the Boomer that said, come on Daily Braaap. I've been trying to get Jay on Daily Braaap. I assume that was you. I don't know who it was.
Yes, it was me. It was indeed me, sir. I just didn't know that you, I was asking how you found the live stream. How did you know we were live right now? That's what...
Because after you said go on your show, I looked it up, and then once you Google anything, or look it up on YouTube, it immediately pops up for a million zillion times in your thread, in your feed.
Excellent, sir. Excellent.
It's like if you look up one Joe Rogan video, they send you 7 million recommended Joe Rogan videos.
Excellent. The Daily Braaap has gone mainstream, sir. It's good to have you on, Mr. Dyer. It really is.
Yeah, I guess I'm paranoid because I'm expecting this to be like some sort of bait and switch thing where you guys are like here to dogpile and take me down or whatever.
No, I'm actually a pretty fair moderator. I'm not going to let that happen. But okay. No, we were just having a morning hangout stream. I'm glad you showed up. It can be a sort of a little impromptu discussion.
I saw something about a Muslim. I thought it was like a debate or something.
No. We were talking to our friend Hassan.
That's a meme. A meme.
Well, I mean, it kind of is a meme. Hassan, you used to be a Muslim.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So.
Do you know anything about Gnosticism, Joe?
Say what?
Gnosticism. Do you know anything about Gnosticism?
He made some videos on it.
Yeah, I've got a few talks on it from Irenaeus. Irenaeus is kind of our earliest record of what the Gnostics taught, and against heresies he has like 300 pages at the beginning of the book just detailing all the Gnostic sects in his day, and until Nag Hammadi that was pretty much the main source.
Because we've got a guy who's, what is he again?
He's a Valentinian.
A Valentinian. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, they're mentioned in Against Heresies. They were one of the main groups.
Yeah, Irenaeus wrote so much about them in that book.
Mm-hmm. There's a guy on the chat you're saying, or just a guy that's y'all's friend or something?
Our friend Hassan was speaking with him in a debate against Protestants, and the guy decided to portray Gnosticism as Protestantism just to get himself into the debate. And he pulled out, Hassan, how would you say it? He pulled out a lot of early church esoteric knowledge on you, and you weren't quite prepared for that.
No, I didn't know much about early church history or much about Gnosticism, so a lot of it was pretty shocking. But a lot of the arguments he was making, as we looked into them deeper, turned out to be false, like about the Arian crisis and some stuff about the Council of Hieria, which, I mean, you'd appreciate as an Orthodox person. A lot of it was nonsense.
Yeah, most of their arguments tend to be. I haven't actually run. No, I take that back. I was on the guy named what's his name, Miguel Connor. He does a podcast. It's like I don't know. He's got like 20,000 followers on YouTube, but it's some kind of Gnostic podcast. And he kept asking me to come on. I was like, I'm not coming on your podcast, dude. And then he's like, no, I want to have an actual exchange. He said, because my wife is not interested in Gnosticism. So she's interested in Christianity. So I ended up doing a podcast with him, which should be up in the next few days. And we actually ended up in kind of a debate about Gnosticism towards the end of it a little bit. Not heavy, but he's pretty much the only Gnostic dude who's ever like stepped forward to debate. So I don't really run into that very much, but there's not one Gnosticism. That's kind of one problem with it, is that when you look at Irenaeus, he traces all these different groups, and I mean, it's just kind of it's a system that people just kind of construct on their own. It's kind of made up.
Isn't there a lot of Gnosticism in the occult also? We do some stuff on the occult and talk about that.
Definitely.
There's massive overlap. He said, I don't know if he was memeing, but he said he was part of this Gnostic Catholic church, which is literally related to Aleister Crowley. So
yeah, that was Crowley created that to be a bridge for Christians to move into Thelema, since he felt like Thelema was a little too hardcore, so that he said people needed a halfway house to kind of get there. So he created the Gnostic Catholic Church. It's pretty funny too, because they have a bunch of all of their saints are all the heretics. So they consider like all the like Arius, and they consider Muhammad a saint. All these weirdos are considered saints in the Gnostic Catholic Church. And they have
wasn't there an Alexandrian patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church in the 90s who said that Muhammad was an apostle?
I haven't heard that, but it could be.
I mean, I looked into it. There doesn't seem to be much like primary information
I don't know
proving
about apostle,
it.
But I mean, the prevalent view, whether it's Orthodox or Catholic scholarship, tends to think that Muhammad was influenced by Nestorian and Arian influenced monks. So he kind of concocted his view of Christ from a mix of Arianism, Nestorianism, Judaism, and then the kind of the resident paganism that was around Mecca, because Mecca used to be a place where all the Arabs would go do their idolatry stuff. Like, it was a huge idol center.
Wasn't Muhammad's uncle an Arian monk?
No, it's a meme. And some people claim that his father-in-law was, or that, and stuff like that, but there's no real information proving that.
Well, one of the best, if you read St. John Damascus, he has a whole treatise called On Heresies, and he was actually the scribe to the Sultan in the 700s. So that's pretty close to the time, of Muhammad.
Which Sultan? They didn't have sultans yet in the 700s.
Just look up, or Caliph. Excuse me. It's a Caliph. So look up St. John Damascus being the scribe to the Caliph.
Yeah, that would be under the Umayyads. Doctrine had changed a lot by the time of the Umayyad dynasty.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that he is an early source talking about the influences on Muhammad. I'm not saying that makes it true. I'm just saying that if you read his book On Heresies, which is, it's like 100 pages, not that long, he talks about these kinds of influences. And the other scholar that goes into that is Yaroslav Pelikan in his History of Christian Ideas book, his series, like 5 volumes. Really good, by the way.
Well, I'll have to read that. My main issue with Islam is, the legitimacy of Muhammad's prophethood, not just based on his influences, but he was never baptized, he was never anointed with sacred oils. There was no previous prophet to recognize his prophethood, to sort of pass on that chain of succession. None of that took place. So it's all very dubious, and all the claims of miracles like the splitting of the moon and so on, even early Muslims disputed on whether that was actually a thing or not. So...
Oh, yeah. So, Dyer, how did you feel about your debate? Well, it wasn't really a debate. It was more like a setting out of sort of a preliminary discussion. I rather enjoyed it. It was a little too big brain for me with a classical theist in you.
I thought it went well. I mean, we've been talking about doing that for a long time. So, typically what tends to happen is that whatever Catholic I interact with, usually there's kind of they're not familiar with the ins and outs of the Eastern position. So there's a little bit of a gap in trying to discuss the issues, but over time you can get there. I mean, I didn't learn that stuff overnight. It took me, about a decade of studying Eastern stuff before I felt like I had a good handle on both East and West. So we had a great chat. We're going to hopefully have a series.
It seems like that's going to happen, yeah. I'd like to host a little bit of it here on the Daily Braaap. Most of what we do here on this show is we go after pagans, we bully them, we debunk their silliness. They say things like, some of the more common things, the easier ones to debunk are the, Christmas was a pagan tradition, Easter was a pagan tradition, this and that sort of stuff. We've also had some big brain pagans on here. I think they're called Vedicists.
Yeah.
No, those guys are interesting. We've also had an Aristotelian.
Yeah, the guy that you had on. Actually, the guy you had on, there was a guy, the Vedic dude. Who's the guy that's the lawyer's got his degree in law or whatever?
I don't know. Which guy
you had him on like a few months ago.
Is Jake Dyer secretly a fan of the Daily Braaap?
No, it was sent to me by a dude trying to set up a debate with this guy. He's like, hey, will you debate this guy? And I was like, who is he? And they said, here, listen to his debate on Daily Braaap. So I checked out.
So then Jay Dyer is a fan of the Daily Braaap.
If you count listening to 2 episodes as a fan,
yes, I do.
Yes, we do.
I haven't made a judgment yet. But
well, I have a friend who wanted to come on and call you gay, but I told him we're trying to have a civil discussion with Mr. Dyer. We don't want to ambush him.
Okay, well, I mean, I have a fiance, so if that's a literal, if it's just trying to trigger me, that's funny. That's fine.
I think he's good-hearted. I think he's good of heart. I think he just wanted to troll you a little bit. Obviously, I'm not going to let him come on and do that. I told him, can he come on and be nice? And he's like, no, probably not. I'm just going to let you guys hang out with Jay.
So let's see. This dude is. Let's see what his name is. Tweetathon?
Ah, yes, he is our Aristotelian pagan.
Okay. Yeah, somebody's trying to set up a debate with that dude.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. He's in the server. I can talk to him. We can actually maybe set something up here on the show if you'd like.
I don't care.
Oh, absolutely. I'll get in touch with him. Let me see.
I wanted to add, though, on that St. John Damascus point, if you wanted to read that, I would recommend if you get I forget who publishes it, but it's a book that comes with 3 of St. John Damascus's works in one. It comes with Defense of the Orthodox Faith and On Heresies and philosophical chapters. So there's like 3 little books and then one big book in one book. And in that, he talks in the book On Heresies, he lists all these different heresies in his day too, which is relevant too for like the Gnostic stuff, because he lists the Gnostics as well, because there were different Gnostics that still existed too. But
yeah. So what's the name of this book that's got these the 3 works in it?
I'll just link it in here. Let me pull it up.
All right, thanks, man. I'll try and find that.
Ah, jeez Louise.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting debate, you and Tweetathon, because Tweetathon really, we essentially...
I think that dude wanted to do it, or I'm not positive. I can't say that.
He'll come on and have a chat. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And he's a good friend of ours, so he'll come on definitely. I guarantee it. It's just a matter of timing.
We got down to a lot of the, the basics of his beliefs, and he really does follow, more of the Christian belief system. It's just he hasn't reconciled his understanding of, basically the Logos with God. Because when we were having a discussion with him, it was between him and a Catholic that we know, and they essentially agreed on the foundational principles. It's just, we come from a Christian perspective versus he comes from a pagan perspective. But he's a smart guy.
He definitely is a smart guy.
Well, did you hear that was kind of what I was getting in that debate that I did with Bog Lord Dave or whatever? If you heard that debate that I just did with the pagan last week.
Yeah, we did. I watched that one. It was
he was kind of saying the same kind of idea. Like he was basically saying, oh yeah, there are objective morals, and his objective morals just happen to match up with Christianity.
Yeah, but doesn't he draw his morals from the Havamal and the Edda? What's your response to that?
That's what I was going to say. It's like,
yeah, what's your response to that though? Whenever they bring up the Havamal or the Edda.
Well, what I tried to say in that debate was that this sort of cafeteria approach doesn't work. Like, there can't be all these things at once, because all of these different religions have conflicting views. And for him to say that he can pick out the commonalities and he knows what they are assumes that he's got the right, benchmark by which he can judge what the commonalities are. I mean, for example, there's the Thuggee cult. Like, why is that? I mean, they practice human sacrifice. Why is that not legitimate, Hindu religion and praxis? Like, he would find that abhorrent, right? Okay, well, on what basis? You see, so when you're trying to find and base your morals in your system on a generic approach to all the different religions of history having some commonality, that just assumes that which things to pick and choose as correct. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, everything just becomes relative.
It is, and I mean that's what I kind of just kept trying to force
But
out.
that's what I found with pagans, is that they're not really pagans, they're just atheists who want to feign some kind of spirituality.
Yeah, that's what my buddy said. That said that he watched that debate and he said, so this guy's basically just an atheist who wants a version of spirituality. And
That's exactly what they are. That's what it always comes down to when you really hammer them on all their ideas and everything. It's just like, well, I don't really believe it. It's just the folk soul.
Yeah, it's just metaphysical archetypes.
Yeah, the race idolaters.
That's what that guy came to that same conclusion too. Like he was like, yeah, I don't really believe all this stuff, but the gods might be real. I'm like, what?
It's just like a supermarket spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Apo, does Jay Dyer still have you blocked on Twitter?
I think so.
Oh no, Jay, you've got to unblock him.
I don't know who's who. I block like countless people. JS.
Yeah, I know.
I block everyone who talks this way.
To be fair, I did call you gay.
I take the JS approach.
Oh wait, your girlfriend doesn't have like a sub 50 IQ, does she? She's not. If you're taking the JF approach.
I don't know. Let me take the food off of her face from where I let me get her out of her high chair and
Oh my goodness! No, I don't hate JF. He's an interesting fella. He is a little.
I'm just
fragile.
making jokes.
Yeah, I know. JF is a little fragile though.
Yeah, I get mad though. I get triggered about theology debates. I don't have a problem admitting that.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest.
I'll give you that one.
I'll see you go off on
when
Twitter.
I watched that debate. You absolutely destroyed JF.
Well, all those positions are the same, like all the atheist materialists, all that stuff. It all ends up being the same. So,
are
it's
we
just
referring to the one that you did on Andy Worski?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one where I was introduced to you. That's where I discovered you for the first time. That actually, yeah, that debate that you did with him actually turned me around and brought me back to the faith. So, I appreciate it. Yeah, that was
Thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely, 110%. Then I found Nick Fuentes after that, and yes. But
you guys just had Nick on, didn't you?
Yes, we did. That was I think Friday night. I think he was on our show.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a good show. It was very entertaining. It's behind the paywall now, though. So if you want to see it, Jay, you'll have to become a premium member.
Word, I hear that.
No, I'm honestly a little surprised. Very unexpected. I just expected that we would have our morning hangout. Maybe we'd play a few video games or something. But it's good to have you on. Do you have anything you wanted to talk about, or? No,
I just figured it would be a pile-on, so I was ready to respond to the haters.
I really didn't want to. Go ahead.
Do you remember Groiper Coughlin on Twitter? You were going back and forth with him a little bit.
No, honestly, I don't remember any. I mean, that's every day. So I don't remember any of the names.
If you look in general chat, 1 second, he made this meme. He won't shut up about it. This meme right here. He made Jay Dyer Groiper.
Oh, he made that one. Yeah, no, I got a kick out of that one. I was laughing.
But he wanted us to read a message. He said Jay Dyer, more like gay crier.
Yeah.
So
I've been hearing that one since high school, dog.
That's a pretty good one.
It's not bad. But I'm just glad Jay's such a good sport about it. Oh man.
Yeah, the one that cracked me up though was the Fulton Sheen CIA. Isn't that in there? Fulton Sheen was CIA.
That's pretty.
Because if you read,
oh no.
I mean, do you guys like Michael Jones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he published that book by David Wimhoff, right? Have you guys read the John Courtney Murray, the big fat book about the CIA's doctrinal warfare program?
No, I haven't.
Well, that's written by a traditional Catholic dude. He's a lawyer, David Wimhoff, and Michael Jones promotes that book.
Really?
The whole book is about that stuff. Like Claire Booth Luce was converted by Fulton Sheen.
Yeah.
And if you look at she was like the top spy, or one of the top spies. Her husband was Time Magazine, Skull and Bones dude.
Yeah.
So, but if you read Wimhoff's book, he pretty much hints at that. I can't recall if he says that Fulton Sheen absolutely was CIA, but
Oh, okay. What's your opinion on Mr. E. Michael Jones?
Logos, logos, logos. It's logos, dude.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought we had entertained the idea of maybe setting up a debate between you and him.
He's already declined it. I've asked him.
Oh, really?
I've asked him. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
he said that he said his interest is history, not theology. So
Yeah. Okay.
my criticism isn't really about history. It would just be about the theological differences. I mean, the logos isn't logic, right? So I mean, the logos is a person, and so in our theology, the logos can't be equated with human logic. So there's definitely a reflection there to the realm of human reasoning and logic, but we have a very precise kind of meaning and understanding of what the logos is. So it has to be distinguished from the logos that's in like Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism and all that stuff.
Yeah, what's your opinion on Owen Benjamin kind of having a little bit of a meltdown right now going on about logos since he's had E. Michael Jones?
I was watching that last, actually the past couple nights. I've seen some Owen Benjamin. I haven't kept up with a lot of his stuff lately just because I'm busy doing my own stuff. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Like, I was surprised to see him have a InfoWars Alex Jones fallout. I guess he was mad that Alex went back on Joe Rogan. That probably pissed him off, and then he had a falling out with that Harrison Smith or whatever that InfoWars dude's name is.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, Owen's definitely taken a harder turn of late.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody did I think it was a 40-minute documentary on Owen Jones and sort of the cult of personality that he's built around himself. I gotta say, it kind of really turned me off of Owen Jones.
Owen Benjamin.
Owen Benjamin. My apologies, Owen Benjamin. Guy did a documentary on him about the cult of personality, about how he was, blocking people who were paying him and, censoring their speech and stuff like that. So, yeah, it kind of turned me off of Owen Benjamin a good bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people though, when you first, if you're new to waking up to that stuff, I remember when I was first starting to wake up to shit, like in 2003 and 4.
Yeah, like
you kind of go crazy for a little bit. Like you think, holy shit, like I've been lied to about all kinds of stuff, and like there's pedo networks are real, and this shit's crazy. There's real Satanists.
That was very blackpilling for me when I discovered about all the pedo cabals and the child sacrifice and all that shit. It's like I still know people who don't like to talk about that because it'll just blackpill them and they'll become very lethargic and apathetic. I don't get that way anymore. I'm very motivated now. I've got the full light of the Holy Spirit inside of me, and I feel pretty good about things.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, I think my fiance and I were talking about this because she eventually converted and became Orthodox too. So
beautiful.
And she said that because she's pretty well known alternative media person, but she was making the point that she did all this conspiracy stuff for a long time, and then at the bottom of the rabbit hole, she said the whole point: what does any of it matter if Christianity isn't true? Like, Christianity makes sense of why there's all this evil, and it actually provides a solution to all this by the resurrection and Christ, giving us hope and all that. But if you don't have that, then what would you go like some nonsense like Joe Rogan promoting that we all live in simulation or some bullshit.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the simulation stuff. I really haven't.
One of the things we try to do here is, because that's so true, that once you start going down the rabbit hole, it's easy to lose your mind, which a lot of guys, especially younger guys, around the 2016 election, they started doing that. And so we try to help younger guys not go down that hole, like not go out and do jaywalks or anything like that. We try to promote Christianity and just being a sane person. Like, you can be aware of these things, just don't ruin your life or do anything rash.
I think so. I mean, I've been through all those phases, acting kind of weird, having it jar you, getting really depressed, black pill, and then kind of going through a long period of, coming back to Christianity.
Intellectual Pygmy donates. He says, "Good to see Jay on here. Became a fan after you owned JF in that debate on truth and had the debate with Nick Fuentes. Also, paganism is just Wicca for men." And he also says here in the chat, "Don't worry, brothers. Thor will come down and smack the Jew with his hammer." Thanks, Pygmy.
Yeah,
We appreciate
did
it.
you know that that Wicca, that Gerald Gardner, he studied under Crowley, and then he went and started Wicca. He just made it up, like he just combined it with the stuff that had this sort of appearance of being ancient and druidic, and he just kind of threw in these other elements. And what I noticed is that all the students of Crowley, whether it's Gerald Gardner, whether it's Jack Parsons, or whether it's L. Ron Hubbard, it's like a thing that you do to, when you graduate from Crowley's thing, you start your own cult. So it's basically training in how to create a cult.
Yeah.
Because all of his followers just go and start their own cult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And so, in other words, the Wicca is just as made up as the Asatru or whatever this crap is. And that's what that dude said in the debate. He's like, yeah, we're constructing this as we go.
It's funny.
He said that.
It's funny that guy came on your show about a week and a half ago. We had a guy come on our show. He was very unashamed. He said he was a former Marine on Obama's security detail, his presidential guard. Excuse me, not his security detail, his presidential guard. He was in the Marine detachment of the presidential guard. He also said that after he got out of the military, he was an Atomwaffen. He was pretty proud about that too. And he was a SR2 pagan. And we got him to open up about... He got pretty mad. He got pretty mad in the course of the discussion because I kept pushing him on, do you guys have female priests? And eventually, he's like, yes, we do have female gothy. And he didn't like that because he knew what I was going at. He got very upset about that. And then he started, Pope kissing inward feet, this and that. And he just kept going on. And he got very, very mad about things because I got him to admit that they have female religious leaders. And that's another problem with paganism, especially one that
is a problem. Yeah, I agree.
Is the matriarchal, and you'll see this. We've dealt with a lot of pagans here on the Braaap. You'll see a lot of these online circles of pagans. They're matriarchies. They're usually led by women. I noticed, Apo, you just tweeted on Twitter at Carolyn Emmerich. I don't know if you know that's her profile.
I know who this lunatic.
I know who that is, yeah.
Yes, I know who
she's an absolute lunatic. I wouldn't be surprised if she's a Fed, but she is definitely not going to debate you. She doesn't debate at all.
She might be crazy enough.
I wish that were the case, but I'm willing to bet money, and I never bet money that she will not debate you.
No, what's funny is a lot of these people are completely ignorant about Scripture, so they don't understand. They don't understand that Jesus is the fulfillment of all these Old Testament types and symbols and prophecies. So, I mean, once you understand that, like it's the continuity makes sense between the Old and the New Testament, but they don't understand that. So they think, oh, Judaism is this, or Old Testament Judaism, I should say, Hebrew religion is this, completely contrary to what Jesus came to bring, type of thing, or they think it's a Jewish conspiracy to subvert the European peoples and all this nonsense, which makes absolutely no sense given the fact that both the Jews and pagan Rome persecuted the church for 300 years.
Yeah. Another thing that they put forward is that Christianity was a conspiracy by the Romans just to control.
Yes.
But what's funny is like the idea that the Romans are going to sit around making up this big massive conspiracy so they can persecute people for 400 years and then convert to that religion to control people that they already control.
Yeah, then people have been trying to get me to debate Joe Atwill, and I guess I will have to eventually, just because his nonsense is becoming more and more popular. Like 3 years ago when they were trying to set it up, I was
Who
like,
is
no,
this
let's
guy?
go. He's the guy who kind of invented the Caesar's Messiah conspiracy thing.
Oh my goodness, that's
and he used to be BFF with Jan Irvin, and then they had a falling. And then so Joe messaged me like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and he was like, "Are you ready to do a debate?" I was like, "Look, I'm not afraid of debating." I was like, "But I don't even take what you say serious at all. It's so absurd."
Yeah.
But I guess if people are latching onto it and hopping onto it, because he went on the Emmerich chick's show. Like he did a show with her, if I recall. So the pagans are latching onto this. They're thinking that this is some, masterful thing.
Because they'll grasp at anything that confirms their own bias.
What he does is he takes Matthew 24 about preterist, which is a preterist text. It's about the destruction of the temple, and he makes this argument that was all rewritten by the Flavian dynasty or something, and it was all rewritten to make Jesus into a Roman figure so that the Roman elite families could control Christianity. So complete ignorance when it comes to what the church fathers of the first 3 centuries taught, because they all teach the same thing that the church fathers for the next, millennium teach. They don't teach something. It's basically, if you're familiar with that Seventh-day Adventist bullshit conspiracy that, Constantine created Christianity after Nicaea. It's that level of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that what the theory that Flavius subverted Christianity basically?
Yeah. So it's like Josephus was friends with the Flavian dynasty, and he was like, Josephus thought that Flavius was the real Messiah or some bullshit like this, and so it builds this big case on what Josephus wrote. But it's all just kind of like assuming that that the Christianity, the first 300 years of the church, isn't in continuity with the New Testament and isn't in continuity with the Christianity after Nicaea, which it is. I mean, all you have to do is, but he's counting on, either he's ignorant or he's counting on people not reading the church fathers for the first 3 centuries of the church to figure out that the church fathers all teach, the Eucharist is the real presence. They teach that there's a liturgy, there's saints, there's, all the stuff that Orthodox and Catholics would agree on. Hello.
Yes, sir. We are here. Braaap, did you have another question for him? Did you want to follow up with that? Or?
Does that make sense? I mean, I don't want to take the string, dude. I mean, does that you see what Atwill's thesis is? Like, I mean, it's a weird thing, but that's why it's amenable to the pagans. The pagans are like, oh, okay.
I don't even understand. So on that, because I've known a lot of these pagans, especially in Carolyn Emmerich's circle, for a while, and I've debated a few of them, and they always bring up the thing with Josephus. I don't even understand why they bring it up. I mean, I understand how it helps their point, but it's, like you said, it's so obvious that there's no continuity there. Why would Josephus even be an appeal to authority at all?
Well, the reason that he is relevant is because he was at the time writing about the destruction of Jerusalem. So he is a great historical resource for showing that Luke 21 and Matthew 24 are referring to a destruction of the temple. But what Atwill and his crew say is, well, instead of assuming that Jesus is predicting the destruction of the temple in 70 AD and that this was actually a fulfilled prophecy, what we should assume is that it was a later reconstruction, that later people added that to the text, and they did that in order to construct a kind of a Jesus that would be amenable to the Roman Empire. So Jesus is like hippie Jesus, right? The real Jesus in this theory is just hippie Jesus walking around teaching, love your friends or whatever. And then later it becomes this construct that elite Roman aristocrat families created so that they could create institutional, Orthodox empire-wide Christianity. It's literally Seventh-day Adventist level bullshit. Constantine created Christianity. Dan Brown type stuff.
That's so retarded.
It is so retarded. That's why it's like you got to be really basic bitch to take that serious.
Yeah, that just shows how stupid these pagans are that bring that up.
Well, they're stupid. They're paranoid. They're antisocial. They're autistic. They're afraid to debate. They're even afraid to have discussions. We've gotten lucky here. We've had a couple of them on. They're pretty arrogant or whatever, and they come on and it makes a good show. People enjoy. They really can't back up a lot of what they talk about.
I mean, they reject logic outright. They just reject any continuity, any historical context for the church. So it's beyond stupidity. It's pure just rejection of truth, which I mean
Right.
you have to do in order to reject Christ. So it makes sense.
Is factual face a pagan?
No, factual face is not a pagan. Is that what he said?
No, he's just trolling me then. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Bryden. Ignore him. Jay Dyer, let me posit a question at you that we get from some pagans that we occasionally defeat in debates. They'll come to us afterwards and they'll say, and I'm going to ask you, do you think there are black people in heaven?
Yes.
So what's your answer to that, Jay?
Do in my theology?
Yeah, well, yeah, I yes.
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, are you asking? Are you asking about what I think the pagan view is, or my?
No, I'm asking about your theology. Do you think in the kingdom of heaven of our God, our Christian God, do you think that there are black people in heaven?
Of course, because the apocalypse apocalypse says that Jesus has purchased out of every tribe, tongue, and nation the people for himself, and they're all before the throne of the Lamb. Amazing. And we have countless icons of black dudes.
Black
Moses
saints,
the Black. Sure.
Absolutely, I can think of
amazing.
Absolutely amazing. I can think of my favorite black saint is Saint Maurice, the Theban Legion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like him. But normally their response to hearing what you just said is, well, see, this is the problem with Christianity.
Well, if you listen to the talks that I did on the Old Testament, a whole bunch of those, what I talk about is the fact that what pagans don't understand is that the calling of mankind back to God, it expands from being in Genesis, it's a family, right? So at the time of, in Genesis it's Adam and Eve, and then by the time of Noah, in each one of these covenants, there's a progressive building on the previous covenant. So Noah is a household, whereas before the covenant with Adam was just Adam and Eve. By the time of Noah, God calls man back to him through a household. Then we move up to the Abrahamic covenant, and it's a tribe. God calls the tribe that's connected with Abraham to him. By the time we move up to the Mosaic covenant, it's a nation. It's the whole nation of Israel that's called back into relationship with God. And then the purpose of all of this, of all these covenants, Paul says in the New Testament, is that all these covenants are one in Christ. So the whole purpose, as he said to Abraham, was to call all of the nations and the families of the earth back to himself. So it's crucial to understand that continuity, because when we move up, well, of course, there's the kingly covenant with David. So that's all the Old Testament covenants. And those are all anticipating the coming of the Messiah. And that's why all of the minor prophets and all the major prophets said, when the Messiah comes, Gentiles will be brought into the covenant and they worship the one true God. So Paul, in many places in Romans 15, Romans 16, he quotes the Old Testament prophets to prove that when the Gentiles are brought into the covenant, then we know the Messianic age has come. So it's a gradually expanding singular covenant that by the time the coming of the Messiah is then open to all the nations. So that's why the church is universal, one holy Catholic Apostolic Church.
Yeah, that's the pagan.
Sounds like ecumenism, cuck.
Sounds like globalism, you cuck. Yeah, I know. That's
it is globalism because Pentecost is the reverse of Babel. It's the true globalism.
Yeah. Can you explain Pentecost real quick?
Yeah, so, if you're familiar with the Tower of Babel story, God divides the nations because they were united in idolatry, in Genesis 10 and 11 at the Tower of Babel. So God divides the nations and divides their languages because men have this tendency to want to unify in rebellion against God. So what Pentecost represents, which is in Acts 2, you have the fulfillment of the Old Testament Feast of Tabernacles. Was one of the feasts that the Jews had, and this was the bringing in of the grains, right, to the storehouse. You collect at the Feast of Tabernacles, you collect these things, bring them into the storehouses, and this is the idea of at Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost, when Jesus sends the Holy Spirit in Acts 2, it fulfills all these prophecies of, again, the nations being brought into the church. So the nations are collected, they're harvested, they're brought in, and that's why Jesus sends the Holy Spirit in Acts 2 to empower the apostles to go forth and to convert the nations. And by doing so, the miracle includes everybody hearing the same message in what it didn't matter what their language was. So everybody is there in the upper room. A lot of people have been converted, Jews and Gentiles. well, at this point, just Jews, but a lot of Jews from all over the empire who had different languages, and they're hearing the same message miraculously in their native tongue. So that was the reversal of where God had split the nations in their languages at Babel.
Wow.
So the church is the family of God, restored, basically. And every one of those previous covenants, whether it's Adam and Eve or whether it's Noah, or it's Abraham, they're all just images of the final covenant, which is the kingdom of God, the church.
Well said. Yeah, the pagans really don't like the idea of, well, they don't like any of that. It's universalist to them. It's, you know, it flies in the face of their ethno-state, but it only bothers them because they're all atheists. They're race idolaters.
That's true, but I mean, in our theology, and I would argue even in Roman Catholic theology, at least for the first millennium, and even after the first millennium, I mean, both East and West had a conception of the fact that the universal nature of the church doesn't eliminate or destroy the racial makeup of the different people groups that make
The
it up.
nations.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Can you give us your take on that? Why it doesn't? We've talked about it a couple of times, but I'd just like to get your view on it.
Well, I just think the normal praxis of people groups in history, you know, like when a group converted, when the Rus converted, when Prince Vladimir converted, his people, and it just wasn't normative in the ancient medieval world that there was a whole lot of, you know, mixing. You might have kings and queens who, you know, arrange for their son to marry somebody from some other dynasty or something. But typically speaking, you know, unless it was some huge metropolitan area, people didn't destroy their native cultures or whatever. But I mean, in some aspects, there's a great documentary on Byzantium I would recommend, where you have the attempt to have an imperium and at the same time balance that with the nation states. And part of the breakup of Byzantium was actually Greek national pride. So you had this well-functioning, most successful economy in the history of the world in Byzantium, and not the only reason. I mean, there's a lot of factors that went into Byzantium collapsing, but one of the factors was Greek national pride.
Mm.
Also, with the reason that there are still nations on earth, Christ said his kingdom is not of this world. So we are united as one universal people under Christ, but in spirit, not in physical nature exactly.
Right. They always take the quote, neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. Okay, Paul's not saying that our genders are all wiped out, right? He's not saying you lose your identity. He's just saying that in the church, God, everybody has an equal footing in terms of, you know, being saved. But he's not saying that the purpose of Christ was to wipe out everybody's heritage and tradition. If that was the case, we wouldn't picture people in their icons according to their history and their race, but they are. Moses the Black is not painted as a gray dude. He's not painted as a white dude. He's painted as a black dude because he's a black dude. Jesus is not, we don't, for example, in our iconography, we would never picture Jesus as Chinese Jesus or black Jesus, because it's very important that Jesus was of Hebrew lineage. He wasn't a Chinese dude.
Yeah. Very well said. One of our premium members, he has a bit of a goofy question. He says, "Hey, Jay Dyer, are there segregated neighborhoods in heaven? Because I don't want to live next to Mexicans." I disavow this comment, but...
No, I don't think there's going to be any notion of divisions like that, like where we have any kind of tensions, because there's a perfect union in spirit and before God. And Paul says Christ will be all and in all. So no, there wouldn't be anything like that.
Sorry to break your balls, Pat Little.
But would there be any interaction with other saints at all in heaven, or would it just be pure, basically benediction for eternity?
No, this is where we make a strong distinction in Orthodoxy about the importance of the body. The whole purpose of the resurrection is to have a body. When Christ is resurrected at the end of the Gospel of John, you see him doing all the same things. He even eats. He didn't need to eat, but he eats, he walks around, he talks. And that's the same state that we'll be in. We'll have a resurrected body like his, but it's the same body that we have. Just as when he was resurrected, he told Thomas to put the fingers in his side. So it wasn't some new ethereal, Gnostic body. It's the same human body that he died in, and we will have the same bodies that we possess, because this is one reason why we don't believe in beatific vision, is that we think that the resurrection plays an important part in the state of things in the next world. So it'll be a new heavens and a new earth, much like the heavens and earth that exist now, but there won't be all the problems that we have now.
Well, what's your problem with the beatific vision? Because I believe in that also, that after the second coming, that our bodies in their perfect form will be resurrected and will be united with them.
Because the beatific vision doctrine is a doctrine that says that we basically stare into the essence of God, and our intellects see God. And we don't think that you ever see the essence of God, and that's too much of an emphasis on the intellectual aspect of man, when man is a holistic unit, body, soul, and spirit. So man's whole being participates in the life of God, and we will be, walking around and doing stuff and talking and exploring the cosmos or whatever, because it was never intended to be a purely intellectual vision. Now, there is a vision of God that we think happens both in this life and is fully perfected in the next life. But that vision of God isn't purely intellectual, or the seeing of God's essence. It's seeing of all things in God for sure. But that's why we believe in the essence energy distinction, because we don't participate in God's essence. We participate in his uncreated energies. And so that's what we, St. Maximus says, when we see all things, it's seeing all things in the uncreated energies of God, not his essence.
One of our premium members, our senior lead producer, he's also one of our ortho bros. We have a lot of ortho fans here. I don't know if you know that, Jay.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, well, young Christian men show. We do pretty good here. It's mostly, Catholics, a few Protestants, one pagan, which is Tweetathon, and a couple of our ortho bros are good friends.
And one Muslim.
Yeah, and one Muslim. No, wait, we've got 3 Muslims.
Yeah.
Come on.
You forgot about Spiculus. You forgot about Spiculus and Torkel. They're both Muslims as well. So yeah.
No, come on. Only Spiculus is a Muslim.
Yeah, Torkel is retarded. I'm not gonna lie, but we love him. Hyman says in the chat, he says, Jay, would it be the same body that you have at the moment you die, or would it be a more youthful body?
I think when the church fathers kind of speculate on that question, they say it's something around the time of the body of the age of Christ. Like Christ's resurrected body was, 33. So
interesting.
I was understanding it's just the perfected form of our natural body. So, like the way God truly intended, physical imperfections that you have imposed upon yourself.
Well, except that when Christ was resurrected, he wanted to retain the piercing in his side. So
that is true.
So does that imply that in your theology that when we go to heaven we retain whatever wounds or injuries we might have, or?
I don't know. I wouldn't claim to know.
Okay.
Well, the problem I have with that,
I think in the case of Christ, it was intentional, so that he, that was an important marker in redemptive history when his side was pierced. So he wanted to retain that and the markers, in his hands as well, I'm sure. So
I think with Christ, it was because of how important it was, and to fulfill the words of the prophet David. Right. So I think it'd be different for us and Christ. Christ needed those imperfections, but maybe, but he might will to, if a martyr was martyred in a certain way, that he might will that, they retain the marks of that honor of martyrdom in their body for all eternity. I don't pretend to that. I don't either. I haven't studied this enough. I was just under the understanding that it was some perfected, in our true image and likeness of God. That was how we would be represented. That's how our bodies would be. I
don't know. That sounds a little Gnostic to me. I think that it's these bodies. They're just transformed. It's not a different body.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying it's a different body. I just mean again, I can't phrase it well, but a perfected version of our own body.
Well, it does say. I mean, Paul says that the resurrected body. He describes it as a new tabernacle. The old tabernacle falls away. The new tabernacle is built, and he says it's a body control. He says controlled, but he says essentially animated by the Spirit. So the Holy Spirit means. So it's the same body, transformed, deified, animated by the Spirit. I mean, that's all we mean by deification, is just the state of immortality and resurrection. That's all it is. But when he says that it's animated by the Holy Spirit, he doesn't mean that it's anti-material, right? A lot of people read that. Actually, Muslims will read Paul and they think that he's being Gnostic. They'll say that they think that when he talks about a body according to the Spirit, that means that it's anti-material. No, it's not. I mean, when Jesus was resurrected, his body was still physical. It still had and possessed solidity, but it was also able to do things that a corruptible mortal body couldn't do. Like he walked through. I mean, he could because he was God, but for us who are fallen, typically speaking, we can't walk through walls, we can't disappear, and so forth. But when Jesus resurrected at the end of John, he's able to do all those things. So he has raised humanity, the flesh that he has, to be able to do things that before the fall it could not do, and we believe that that's exactly the archetype and pattern for us. John says in 1 John that when we see him, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he truly is. So Paul says he will raise our lowly body in Philippians to be after the pattern of his holy flesh.
Interesting.
He says after his immortal body is what Paul says in Philippians.
Groiper Coughlin in the chat says glorified body. Groiper Coughlin, get in here, buddy. Come hang out with Jay. It'll be fun. Come on. Jay had a good laugh at your Groiper, your Jay Dyer Groiper. It was a lot of fun. Come on.
I was going to share it and I couldn't find it when I was looking for it. Actually, I thought the meme was pretty funny. 1 second,
I'll find it. It's
No, I see it in the chat now, but okay. I was saying like 2 days ago I was going to share it.
That's a good one.
Because somebody was like, "Dude, have you seen the meme mocking you, bro?" I was like, "Which one?" There's a bunch of.
It's pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie, but in a good way. I don't think it's. I don't think.
I don't give a shit. I'll share it. Yeah, I do think it's funny.
Could you articulate better your problem with the beatific vision? Where is it because that it focuses too much on the intellectual side?
Jay, you couldn't find it because you blocked me, buddy.
Yeah, I block a lot of people, so you're in a privileged category of the giant mass of damned blocked.
Right, but you have the stream on the background?
Yeah. Sorry, I just woke up a little while ago. I'm not quite all here yet.
But so my question on the beatific vision. So, wouldn't it be possible though? I don't have a full understanding of it. Maybe you could articulate it better. But my understanding is that we would see
It's related to the reason that we have a problem with the Roman conception of divine simplicity. So, in my view, that affects eschatology as well. It doesn't just affect like arguing about the Trinity or the Filioque or the uncreated energies. It also affects the eschatology because in the Eastern view, there's a more kind of worked out eschatology of what happens after the resurrection. So St. Gregory of Nyssa and St. Maximus have pretty lengthy kind of fleshed out views of this. And what they talk about is the fact that we continue to move forever and ever up into God. Like we continue to move around him and up into him because we never exhaust God. We'll always be learning God for all eternity, right? So part of the debate was because Origen said a long time ago that the final state is an intellectual vision of God whereby there's no more change. So Origen had this kind of Platonic view that if your will willed anything other than the divine essence, that was the fall, right? So, for example, when Origen talks about Genesis and the fall, he says that the reason the fall happened was because it's in some eternal pre-eternal state, everybody was united in perfect intellectual perception of the unity of God, the simplicity of God. And then when they moved their wills away from this one perfect essence of goodness, he says that's the fall. And that's what resulted in spirits falling into being created, right? So he has this kind of reincarnation, Platonic view of the fall. Hardcore, right? This is condemned explicitly at the Sixth Council, where they actually rehearse Origen's view of the fall. So what happens is there's a debate about whether or can will multiple goods and not be fallen, right? So in other words, what Origen has is a dialectic between the one and the many, where he thinks, like Plato, that if there's multiplicity, if things are multiple, this is somehow a lesser state of being. So if you will something other than God, if your gaze focuses somewhere other than the singular divine essence, then you're fallen. You've corrupted yourself. You're looking to things other than God. So there's a debate then about what is the status of the focus of the mind or the nous or whatever in the afterlife, right? And so what becomes the beatific vision doctrine is, in my view, why we don't believe it, is just another version of the same idea that to will anything other than the essence of God would be some kind of corruption or some kind of fall. But we don't believe that, because we don't believe that there's only one good thing to will. God is not just one, he's also many. And like you said earlier, what about the other saints? We'll be interacting with the saints and so forth. We would say yes. So because God is present in all things, not by his essence, but by his energies. There's nothing wrong with interacting with and hanging out and talking to Moses the Black and hanging out and talking to King David, and because we will be doing bodily interactions as we do now, right? So there's this assumption in Origenism, which leads to the beatific vision doctrine, that bodily interactions where you will things other than a singular essence of God, that's somehow a lesser state of being, or somehow corrupted, because you have to only be focused in your intellect on this singular, absolutely simple essence of God. And we also don't think that's what defines free will. So this also becomes an issue in the debate with Origen, and then later the debate with the monothelites, where they think that willing things other than the one is the source of man's fall and man's corruption. But that's not the problem with man. Man's problem is not metaphysical, it's moral. Right? There's nothing wrong with willing multiple goods or having your mind or intellect turn to multiple different goods. That's not man's problem.
Well, my understanding, wouldn't for eternity, if we were to reach heaven, wouldn't we just be trying to understand the essence of God? So even if we wouldn't reach full understanding, wouldn't we for eternity be in that one state of learning more, basically?
No. We don't have anything to do with the essence of God at all. Basil says, if you read letter 234 of Basil, he talks about this. He says that we don't know anything about God's essence, but what God has done is condescend to us through his operations, or energeia, energies, and that's what we experience, right? So God's love, God's justice, God's mercy, God's glory, God's providence, God's foreknowledge, those are all his uncreated operations or energies, and that's what he extends to us. That's what we participate in, and that's what we learn and forever move up into God. That's why they made a point, the Eastern Fathers made a point to reject Origenism by saying that we're not static in the afterlife, because we have bodies, and that's why we're forever in a movement up into God. So free will cannot be defined as a choice between good and evil. That's not what free will is. That's what free will is after the fall. That's how we typically define it. But Adam and Eve possessed free will because they could will multiple goods before the fall. And similarly, in the afterlife, we can't say that we lose free will. But in the Roman Catholic position, if the beatific vision doctrine is true, how do you have free will if there's only one thing to will? The only thing to will is the essence of God, then you don't have free will. But it's part of human nature to possess free will. We believe that when Christ assumed human nature, he has it forever, for all eternity. And part of human nature is the operation of the will, right? So how do you have free will if there's only one thing to will, namely the essence of God? It doesn't make any sense. So you do have free will in the afterlife because there are multiple goods that you can will.
Well, I haven't heard anyone say that you don't have free will in the afterlife.
Right. No, I know that Roman Catholics would say that.
And there's also a different conception of what freedom of the will means. to will the good is something that's granted to you by grace. Yeah, so it's you would be more free in heaven than you would be on earth.
Yeah, but there's nothing to choose. There's only one option.
Well,
So
it's not about.
choices.
It's not fundamentally about choice. I mean, that's part of it, but that's not the ultimate.
It is about choice, because every patristic definition in terms of anthropology about human willing, and this is true when both St. Gregory of Nyssa and St. Maximus, when they talk about Adam before the fall or the saints in eternity, they make the point of stressing that we do possess free will because you can will multiple goods. It still is choice. If there's not a choice, then it's not. So to say you possess a truly free will by not having choice doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I would say that you can have a truly free will without choice, but part of our free will is choice. If
you can't possess a free will without choice, then what in the afterlife can you will other than the essence of God?
Well, I'm not even saying that's the view of eschatology that I agree with. I haven't really read into it that much, but whatever. Specifically with regard to freedom in general, I do think that it's true that you still have the faculty of a free will, and you are more free in your will, because freedom in the will is ultimately the ability to will the good. And we do have the ability to will lesser goods as well.
We agree with that.
Yeah.
And there are multiple goods in the afterlife. So then the beatific vision doctrine is not true, because it argues that there's only one good to will in the afterlife.
I don't know if that's true, but I genuinely don't know if that's true. It is,
because absolute divine simplicity is ultimately you staring at the essence of God. It's you merging with and staring into the essence of God. At the same time as the argument
merging with.
Well, they say two things, right? I just pointed this out in yesterday's talk. They say, on the one hand, that what you get is a supernatural created grace. And they also say that it's a real participation in the divine life. And those two things are mutually exclusive if absolute divine simplicity is true.
All right. So supernatural created grace. And I'm sorry, what was the second thing?
Yeah. So when Ott lists these different propositions for grace, number one that he lists is sanctifying grace is a created supernatural gift that you get. The grace itself, okay, we're not talking about sacraments, we're talking about the grace itself is a created supernatural state that you get. And then I think point 5, Ott says sanctifying grace is a participation in divine life. Okay, so both of those things can't be true at the same time, because divine life is not created, it's uncreated.
I don't see why you couldn't have a sort of created subset or created whatever that allows you to participate, or a tool that allows you to participate, or
but it's not real participation.
Some other analogy thing,
because what you get is created.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's not a real participation because the grace itself is created.
Why?
It's not a medium. The grace itself is created. It's not a medium for you to participate in the real thing. It's not the justice of God that you get, Trent says. It's a created justice.
No, the grace is created. The justice of God's justice isn't.
I know. Trent says that when you're justified, the righteousness that you're given is not the righteousness by which God himself is just. It's a created justice. So it's not a real participation.
All right. Would you cite that for me?
Yeah, it's in the talk that I did yesterday. It's in Trent. It's Denzinger 799, and it's referencing two canons from Trent. That's what Trent says. And then if you read Ott, I have it posted. Just open up Ott to the first 5 propositions about what grace is.
Is the grace created or generated from God?
It is created. It is a supernatural created state.
All right. So chapter 7, in what the justification of sinners consists and what are its causes. So 799, justification itself follows this disposition or preparation, which is not merely remission of sins, but also the sanctification and renewal of the interior man through the voluntary reception of grace and gifts, whereby an unjust man becomes a just man, and from being an enemy becomes a friend, that he may be an heir according to hope of life everlasting. The causes of justification are: the final cause indeed is the glory of God and of Christ in life eternal. The efficient cause is a truly and merciful God who gratuitously watches and sanctifies. Signing an anointing with the Holy Spirit of promise, who is the pledge of our inheritance. But the meritorious cause is his most beloved, only begotten Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, who when we were enemies, for the exceeding charity wherewith he loved us, merited justification for us by his most holy passion on the wood of the cross, and made sanctification for us to God the Father. The instrumental cause is the sacrament of baptism, which is the sacrament of faith, without which no one is ever justified. Finally, the unique formal cause is the justice of God, not that by which he himself is just, but by which he makes us just. Namely, by which, when we are endowed with it by him, we are renewed in spirit and mind, not only... Okay. We are receiving justice within us. Okay, yeah, so it's a... Alright, well...
So it's not God's justice, and I put in the chat.
Okay,
hold on. I put the first 5 of oughts. They're listed there in the chat. There, you can see that number 1 is that the sanctifying grace itself is a created supernatural state, and then point 5 says that it's a participation in divine life. So if absolute divine simplicity is true, both of those things can't be true.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be true because of the way we treat analogy. You could say that, or I think you would say. And mind you, I'm like a catechumen. I'm very new to all this. So if I slip up, pardon me. But analogically, you would look at, okay, I have justice in me. It's this created grace, which provides me justice or whatever. But that is participation in the divine life because God is just.
No, it's not. It's not a participation because divine simplicity requires that you don't actually participate in the justice that God himself has. It's a created state. And just like St. Gregory told Barlaam, if all you get in salvation is just another creature, then you're not saved. What was the point of the incarnation?
Well, no, you do if God is love,
God is
by loving
love. God is uncreated love.
It's still love.
It's not God's love. Okay,
God is the source of all love.
But salvation is not created love. Salvation is participation in uncreated love. That's why it's called eternal life and not mortal life that you get. Well, salvation is eternal life, immortality, not mortality, not created, uncreated.
I agree.
Okay, so then that only comes from God. What does Paul say? Paul says to Timothy, God alone possesses immortality and eternal life. So he has to communicate that to us. It's not something that is natural to our created state. It's something that we have to participate in, that he has to give us. So what is it that he gives us? Is it created or is it uncreated? It's either one of the two. It can't be both. There's no mediation between these two, right? So it's uncreated because Jesus says in John 17 that he came to give us the glory that he had with the Father before the foundation of the world. Not a created likeness, not an analogy to it, the actual glory that he had with the Father before the foundation of the world. That glory is uncreated.
Well, right, but we don't attain the fullness of that until we are in heaven.
No, in the Roman Catholic view, you never attain the fullness of that because it's unclear whether you actually get the glory of God or whether you get a created supernatural state.
I mean, no.
No, and by the way, Paul says that we participate in that now. He doesn't say it's only in the afterlife. It's a reality that begins now.
I did say fully. I didn't say we don't at all. I said fully.
Yeah, but in the Roman Catholic system, you can't participate in the nature of God. That's impossible.
You participate.
But it says right there on point 5 that you do participate in the divine nature.
Right, and that's why I'm saying it's inconsistent. It's a contradiction because 1 and 5 contradict.
But 1 is talking about sanctifying grace, and 5 is talking about supernatural grace.
1 is talking about the same thing. It's the same state that you get. Both.
Well,
it's
the
a
same
created
state, but it's 2 graces.
It's talking about the same thing. It's salvation. It's saying that on the one hand, what you get, the thing that saves you, is a created supernatural gift. What is a created supernatural gift? An angel? It doesn't make any sense, because it's either uncreated or it's created. So point 1 specifies that from that point on, the grace from that point on is created.
Well,
right?
no,
So,
it says there is a clear distinction here between sanctifying and supernatural grace. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that distinction is, but they felt it was important enough to write it out.
Yeah, but the sanctifying grace is supernatural created state. That's point 1.
Okay, right, but we have to go into what the actual definitions of those mean before you can say, no, it's a contradiction.
But it doesn't matter to us from our perspective, because this was already settled a long time ago. So what we're pointing out is that you guys are confused about the topic. Rome is confused about the topic, and it's unclear, showing that Rome has departed from what was abundantly clear in all the Eastern Fathers who taught uncreated grace. And one way that they argue that is by the fact that in the Incarnation, both St. Maximus in his dispute with Pyrrhus and St. John Damascus in Book 3 of Defense of the Orthodox Faith, they talk about the energies that Christ communicates to his human nature, right? So when Christ raises his human nature, deifies it, as the Sixth Council says, that's how we're deified, because we participate in that humanity. And the argument is the same for the sacraments, by the way. So when we participate in the Eucharist, it's by participating in that energy of God that transforms the Eucharist, right? So this is the argument Cyril used against Nestorius at Ephesus. He says the Eucharist is not the body of a human, some guy, it's the body and blood of God. And it's that way, St. Cyril says, by the divine energies raising those elements, just like the divine energies raised the humanity of Christ, just like we are raised by the uncreated energies of Christ. So what I'm getting at is that when you understand that, you see that this was already made clear, and it's already predicated at the Sixth Council on the reality of the essence-energy distinction. Now, Rome does not believe in the essence-energy distinction. Many times over, it has stated that this is a violation of accident and substance in terms of Aristotelian definitions of who God is, right? So when they try to make sense of justification and the grace that we get, what you can then see is a back and forth on, well, if God is absolutely simple, what are we participating in? Well, it's got to be something created, because it's not the justice or the love or the whatever predicate you want to use of God, because that's God himself. And those are all identical to his essence. So what we get is something created. And then they also want to realize and say, like us, with us, well, yeah, but the Bible and the Church Fathers teach that the participation is real. We really do participate in divinity. Absolutely. But that can't be the case if absolute divine simplicity is true. So the grace cannot be created. It has to be uncreated. And it already is dogmatized as uncreated.
All right.
Does that, I mean, I'm not asking if you agree, but do you see the argument, is what I'm saying.
I think I see where you're coming from. However, I think that this is something that it would take a lot longer and someone more knowledgeable than myself on the other side of things in order to really parse through every document you're referencing. Especially, I mean, I'm personally skeptical about your interpretation of like the Sixth Ecumenical Council, right? Just because, from where I'm sitting, the Roman Catholic Church accepts the Sixth Council, and so I really doubt that it would go that off the wall with what the Sixth Council said and intended. Of course, you would assert that.
Yeah, and the irony is that all you have to do is read St. John Damascus' Defense of the Orthodox Faith, where from Book 1 up to Book 3, he bases essentially the entire presentation of God on the essence-energy distinction. Okay, so the essence-energy distinction just in who God is in Book 1 is the basis for the essence-energy distinction in Christ, in Christology in Book 3. So, yeah, I mean, that's... when you read these things, you will find that is so. And the dispute that Maximus has with Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus was a monothelite. That book is only 120 pages. And you'll see that the entire argument is premised on the essence synergy distinction as it pertains to Christ. And that's why, by the way, St. John Damascus actually he references both St. Maximus's dispute with Pyrrhus and the Confession of St. Sophronius, which is accepted at the council. And the Confession of St. Sophronius talks about the essence synergy distinction. I mean, it's not hard to find these references and these resources. And I understand where you're coming from, because when I was a Roman Catholic and I read...
you weren't really a Roman Catholic.
I absolutely was. What do you mean?
You said you were a sedevacantist, right?
No, I was received into the Novus Ordo in 2003. I attended there for about 2 or 3 years, and then for the next several years, I went to the SSPX Latin Mass.
Okay, I thought I heard you say you were a sedevacantist.
I did, and I was, when I adopted Seda, I still went to the SSPX, and I did that for 2 or 3 years, and then I finally had a blowout with SSPX priest, and he asked me to leave. So.
Was that over your sedevacantism, or?
Yeah. It was over, actually, an argument over John Paul II, because at that time he wasn't canonized, and I said, they're going to canonize John Paul II, and he's like, oh, no, they won't. It was Father Gregory Post, and I said, well, what are you going to do when they do? They never will, and don't speak such things. I said, okay, well, hypothetically, if they do canonize John Paul, will you accept it? And he said, no. And I said, you have to accept canonizations. They're part of ordinary universal magisterium. They're infallible. And he said, no, they aren't. And so that's when I really started having a problem with the SSPX. Was that I was like, these guys actually don't accept the ordinary universal magisterial teaching.
No, I personally don't really have a stance on the infallibility of canonizations, just because I haven't really dug into it.
Well, Vatican I says the universal ordinary magisterium is infallible, so that's not disputed, right? But people will dispute, okay, but canonizations aren't part of that. Okay, but if you think about it, you could then hypothetically doubt any saint. Come on, that's crazy. So I could challenge the sainthood of Saint Basil.
Can I ask a question quickly?
Sure,
of course.
Whereabouts does the First Vatican Council say that ordinary magisterium is infallible?
Just do a Control F. I showed it in the talk last night that I did.
Okay, thank you.
Pull it up. It's about the middle, I think. And by the way, I would add to here's this quote from Ott as well, because this shows too, by the way, that the argument about the uncreated energies isn't just about God himself. In other words, even Roman Catholics realize it's connected to Christology, because there's a quote in Ott that says, by reason of his endowment with the fullness of created habitual grace, Christ's human soul, he's talking about Christ's human, obviously, Christ's soul is also accidentally holy. So I put that in the chat. And what that shows is that it's the same. If it's created grace for us, it's going to be created grace for the humanity of Christ as well, which we think is crazy. Because Book 3 of Defense of the Orthodox Faith and St. Maximus's dispute with Pyrrhus make it very clear what's going on in the incarnation. It's uncreated grace. It's not created.
All right. Well, I'll have to. I suppose I'll have to read into that stuff. I'm probably not going to be the guy that you want on the other side of the table from you for any of these discussions. Anyway,
we're not really having a debate right now. Anyway, I've just got a lot of questions for Jay, and I'm a little flabbergasted that he actually decided to show up. I'm very grateful, Jay.
I'm pretty easy to interact with and contact. Why? I think people are just triggered and they don't want to have,
Well, there's been a few times I've seen where you literally say debate me, and then before any other interaction, you block the person.
No, in the 2 cases that I can think of where those guys did that, it was nothing but like just total vitriol. So why would I debate somebody when I offer them to come on, and the guy for the next hour just says, "You're a piece of shit. You're a loser."
No, it was the last interaction between the two of you was debate me, and then
which person is this?
I think that might have been a Poe.
Who?
The guy Apo right there in the chat.
Is he still here
at the moment?
Okay.
I don't know if Apo is still here.
Yeah, he might be gone.
Well, I'm from the world of philosophy, so when I started undergrad, like right away we did debates, right? So like my sophomore year, like I did a public debate with professor. So I'm from the world of debate. That's all of grad school. It's just philosophy is constant debate. So that's what I'm used to. And if a person just acts weird, or if they don't accept the debate, then what's the point? I mean, if you're going to talk shit, why don't you?
Well, he hadn't actually responded accepting the debate or not yet. That's my point. There was no other interaction.
Other
Sometimes
than
I
APO.
will. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say Groyper Coughlin. Other than APO, who was the other one? Because I remember APO was one, and then there was someone else. I think it was was it Owen Cyclops?
I honestly can't quite remember. I remember seeing it.
Owen been always pretty positive in his interactions with me.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
We like Owen Cyclops.
Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, again, I block people all the time, but the dude is welcome to debate me now. I don't care. Like
I think he's AFK right now. No, I'll definitely try and set something up. But I've actually got a couple of future shows planned. We wanted to do one on conspiracy theories, and we tried to do one before, but things kind of fell through, and our main guest wasn't able to appear.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to set one up in the future. That would be kind of fun.
Okay.
Just conspiracy theories in general, whichever ones you think. I think Bros, if you have an idea on which ones we want to cover, I'm really down for any of them.
I mean, there's a few. Obviously, Skull and Bones would be one that would be very interesting. Just going over the history of that. Anything with Aleister Crowley and Israel Regardie, those guys.
Mm-hmm.
That type of stuff. I'd like to get into the Sankt Gallen Mafia, if you know anything about that.
The what?
The Sankt Gallen Mafia.
Is that like?
Basically, there were a bunch of clergy that had ascended, or that ended up ascending to very high ranks in the episcopacy, that were all getting together in this town in Switzerland called St. Gallen, and it's basically every big name in the Lavender Mafia, as it's been referred to, was a part of this.
I gotcha. Is that in the what's that book about? Goodbye, Good Men. Is that
no? It's very, very recently coming out. It started with. Have you heard about James Grimes? He's the guy who was, while he was actually a minor, was raped by McCarrick.
No, I don't know about any of this stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, so
I know about McCarrick, but I don't know.
Yeah, so he was doing the whole thing with seminarians for years, but that's not actually illegal in the U.S. for some reason. It should be, but James Grimes was a child when that happened to him with McCarrick, and he also used to basically take James Grimes all over the world with him as he did stuff. And so part of that was going to St. Gallen. He mentioned it, and then people started digging into that. And basically there's this whole, it kind of looking at the roots of the Lavender Mafia and its current incarnation, as opposed to, the specifically homosexual thing, as opposed to, prior communist things or Jewish infiltrations or whatever.
That's interesting. Wim Hof's book would tie into that too, because Wim Hof shows that the WASP, Skull and Bones power structure is really who had a big say so in co-opting Rome during the Cold War after Vatican II.
Yeah, I'm sure. What's the?
And by the way, co-opting would involve a lot of the sexual blackmail.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That certainly seems to be a pattern amongst elites when they want to,
right.
They want to recruit someone, they get a bunch of sexual blackmail on them.
Exactly.
And then I believe that there's probably also like satanic binding rituals and what.
That like 10 years ago, Lucifer's Lodge, and Craig Heimenbichner's book, Blood on the Altar, showed all.
Yeah, the anal sex is the surest way to get like possessed by a demon or whatever crazy.
Yeah, even dubious Malachi Martin has that in Keys of this Blood, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to agree with you on Malachi Martin because I have a general thing with figures where like I'm not going to say everything they say is false, and maybe they did a bunch of good stuff later. But if they were doing something like, working for the ADL to subvert a church council, they're not going to be the most reliable source going forward.
No, but what you can learn from them, what they're trying to protect and what they are after. So when I cite Malachi Martin, it's with that in mind. Do you see what I'm saying or not?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So no, even though he's a dubious figure, he was a Vatican insider, and if you know that he was there to kind of run point for the establishment on traditionalism, then you have a vantage point by which you can say, oh, okay, so he knows about the Satanism in the Vatican because he's probably in on it.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Joe?
Ripper. No, go ahead.
No,
Finish.
I genuinely wasn't going to say anything. I was making mouth noises.
All right, excellent. Mr. Rats, one of our premium members, he's got a question for Jay Dyer. Go ahead, Rats.
Oh, hi, Jay. I was just wondering what books would be best for understanding the Orthodox view of the energies. I know you've covered this before in some talks or whatever, but I'd like to just buy it myself and read through it.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest one would be, I would say, read two letters. Read letter 234 of Basil, and then read letter 38 of Basil, because he was a towering figure when it came to the specifics of the Trinity, and what would be adopted in the councils for the Trinity. So, and those are easy reads. And then I would read. I'm trying to think of the best single book that encapsulates the argument.
What letters were those? Sorry, 238 and
234 and 38.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then specifically on the question of the energies, I would either just read "Defense of the Orthodox Faith" by St. John Damascus.
Okay.
Yeah, that's usually best for Roman Catholics because that kind of shows the divergence between because. Aquinas disagrees with St. John on that point.
Yeah, I've been looking into this. There's been very, very few apologetics, or they've said, well, they haven't really looked into the, I'm trying to not misword this, the mysticism that some of Aquinas' letters had that kind of could be used as apologetics for the Orthodox view, or vice versa.
The claim that he said later that he all wrote straw and all that story and all that.
If that's what they're referring to, possibly. I didn't actually know what they referred to.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think because he was so interested in a lot.
Excuse me. Sorry. Braaap? Go ahead.
I think there was one background to this is the divergence between how the East and the West view Aristotle. And I would say David Bradshaw's book, Aristotle, East and West, is a great place to start because we have two different views of Aristotle. So if you look at the way St. John Damascus uses Aristotle in the book I referenced, it's different than the way Aquinas uses it because Aquinas sees an attempt to synthesize both Plato and Aristotle in the way that he reads Dionysius. But if the way we read Dionysius, when he talks about divine energies, they're actual energies. They're not, Aquinas calls them just virtual, nominal, conceptual distinctions. They're not real distinctions. But we believe that Dionysius teaches that they're real distinctions.
Well, once again, classical theists brought it up that that's what you assert, but that isn't what St. Thomas Aquinas would say.
Well, but even when he tried to give the explanations of the differences, he said they're virtual. Virtual doesn't mean anything different than conceptual or logical. Just look at what?
No, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Because all you know is the created effects of what God does in the world, right? So in the Catholic Encyclopedia and Ott, I have a whole essay on it. It's pretty clear that the dogmatic definitions are accepting the view that the distinctions that are made are only nominal. I mean, again, you guys can use whatever term you want because it's not our position. It's not that they're real. I mean, we're very emphatic that the distinction between foreknowledge and mercy, or the distinction between God creating the world or Jesus walking on water, they're distinct acts in reality. They're not virtually distinct. They're really distinct.
Well, I mean, obviously, Jesus walking on water is distinct from his knowledge.
Well, then you agree with us.
Well, no, but
you do, because Aquinas says every act of God is identical in essence. They're all the same.
Well, that's walking. It can only be an act of Christ qua human, not an act of Christ qua God, because fundamentally,
it's an action proper to
God is immaterial.
It's an action proper to his divine nature. So you could just use the act of creating the world and the act of the conflagration. It doesn't really matter. The point's still the same.
Well, so the acts of creation, the relation between his creation and his essence, doesn't. Oh crap! I was reading a book on this, and it's
but it's not about the effects. We're not debating the effect, debating the act itself. So Orthodox theology makes a distinction between nature, person, will, and action. We see those things as all distinct. Doesn't mean that they're parts. It just means that they're distinctions. Just like when a human being acts to build a thing. This is why I told you to read Letter 38 of Basil, because he talks about this. He makes these distinctions between nature, person, will, act, etc. The action of building a house is different from you, right? If you build a house, it's an action proper to human nature. So it's a work proper to you as a human. A human can do that. But the effect of the action of building the house is the house. The action is the work, the energy, the operation that goes into doing it. And you as a person are distinct from all of those things because a person is particular, but you have a universal human nature that we all share. That's, again, universal. Right, so that's kind of the analogy that the Eastern Fathers always use to try to describe how it's similar in God. Obviously, God doesn't have God is not just one person; He's three persons with one nature. But they'll use that analogy, and they'll say that when God creates the world, the action of creating is not the same thing as His essence. This was Saint Athanasius's entire debate with the Arians, and why generation is different from creation. If absolute divine simplicity is true, Saint Athanasius said then. To the Arians, he said, then there's no distinction between creating and generating. So the action of creating the world in Thomism, though, Thomas is very explicit many, many times over that any act of God, this is what actus purus means, any act is synonymous with the divine essence. Again, the distinctions are only made in the human mind. They're only conceptual. They're only virtual. If you don't want to use the word nominal, that's fine.
Well, I mean, that's not what actus purus, as I've ever heard it, does mean. It means that God is pure actuality, as in He doesn't have any potential in Him.
Yeah, but that means that the action of creating the world is synonymous with His essence, and God didn't have to create the world. So if He freely created the world, then there is potentiality.
No. Being in actuality doesn't mean you're identical with a certain act.
No, the Thomistic doctrine, the Roman doctrine, is that the essence of God is absolutely, strictly identical to every act of God.
I really don't think that's true.
That is absolutely true.
I can't cite you anything, but that sounds...
It's absolutely true, not even in debate. Any standard Thomistic manual will tell you that.
All right, Woo Lad donates, and he says, ask him about the Philoquay.
What about it?
I have no idea. He didn't finish his question. Brandon Thorpe donates and says, Brandon Thorpe did nothing wrong. I'm sorry for muting Brandon.
Jay, wasn't the problem with the Filioque between the East and West, wasn't that resolved in, I think, 934?
Mm-mm.
Well, wasn't there an explanation or something like that? I don't remember the exact year, but some year in the 900s, mid-900s. I believe the Latin Rite came out with an explanation on the Filioque.
Through the Sun? Something along those lines?
Yeah, but I mean, Orthodoxy agrees with through the Sun, but this relates to the essence energy distinction. It relates to what I was saying about creation. We think there's a distinction between the hypostatic origin of the persons, the eternal manifestation of the Spirit from the Father through the Son, and the economic sending of the Spirit into history. So this is where it gets a little complex, but Orthodox theology makes a strict distinction between, again, we don't think that because there's a distinction that there's parts, but we make a distinction between those, you could say, levels of God, if you will, even though that's just an analogy. We make a distinction between those three things. And what happens in the question of the filioque is that Catholic theology, we believe, confuses hypostatic origin with eternal manifestation. So there's like the famous quote, for example, between Maximus, where Maximus says that when the Latins talk about the filioque, it's his letter to Marinus. He says, we have spoken to many of them, and he says they understand it in the Orthodox way, which is that the Father is the sole the cause, but that the Son is eternally manifested through the Spirit. That's in I think the letter to Marinus. I can quote it for you here in a minute in the chat. But so in our view, there was nothing wrong with Latin theology at that time, but later, probably around the time of the Franks or when St. Photius wrote the Mystagogy, there becomes a more explicit idea that the origin of the Spirit in terms of his person is a double hypostatic procession. So the Son and Father are co-cause of the Spirit. And that's where it becomes problematic. So at least by St. Photius's day, but pretty explicitly, I think Denzinger has, before the Council of Florence, I think Denzinger has one or two maybe regional statements about the double hypostatic procession that the popes approved. So for us, that's where it becomes problematic.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's some big brain shit you guys are talking about there. I don't get much of it, though. But yeah, we've been going for 2 hours. I think I'm going to go ahead and end it soon. Did you have anything else, Broseph?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I got a
Thanks
question.
for coming on, though, Jay. We'd love to have you back sometime and talk about more of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be love to come on and debate pagans or whoever.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad. Have you enjoyed your time on the Daily Braaap, Jay?
Yeah, everybody was cool. I'm glad it wasn't uncivil.
No, it wasn't going to be. I try not to let things get that way unless both are consenting to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Rats, if you want more questions, you got to re-up your premium silver membership.
All right, last question. Look, I'll buy your oil. I'm going to buy it for my mom.
Okay,
honestly.
well, you've got like 2 hours. That's, by the way, I wanted to ask Jay
Really,
about
2
this.
hours?
Jay, yeah, we only have like 2.5 hours left on the sale, and then we're going to reevaluate the prices. Jay Dyer, what's your opinion on olive oil?
What do you mean?
Well, what do you think of olive oil in general? Do you use it yourself?
I don't have any problem with it. Yeah, sure.
Oh, excellent. You should check out our. We actually. The reason I bring it.
Sheldon J. Dyer.
You guys sell olive oil?
Well, our show got our first sponsor, Cielo Olive Oil, premium grade, extra pure, virgin, cold pressed olive oil from Croatia on the Adriatic Sea. Really high quality stuff. And we've got our own affiliate link as well. Very impressed.
Is it worth getting I've had people reach out and say, will you pimp my shit on your podcast? And I've never gone for it. Is it worth doing it? Do you recommend having sponsors?
I guess it depends on the sponsor. I really like Cielo Olive Oil because I know the guy who runs it. He was on our show when we were really small, and back then he didn't give us an affiliate link, and I didn't even know he was doing that. But you know, he's a small Christian business owner. He's his family owns the orchard. We did a show on it yesterday. His family owns the orchard in Croatia. Yeah, so we know where it's coming from. It's a good little Catholic village in Croatia. It's premium, extra pure virgin olive oil. It's cold pressed, and he's a good guy, you know. And it's he gave us a pretty good deal. I'm not gonna lie on the olive oil for our viewers. I think it's almost half off.